Guys, I'm just excited to be here this morning. I'm excited every Sunday, some more than others. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. And today I'm very excited. I promised you last week, and many of you have been asking about where we're at with the Sanctuary Project. And we wanted to take a little time in our Sunday morning service just to give you an update. Those of you that are guests and maybe you're with us the first time going, what? You'll kind of get caught up to speed. There's some things that you'll be able to hear today and kind of know where we're heading as a church. And then afterwards, we'll get right back into our sermon. But in just a moment, I'm going to ask George Pla, our chairman, to come up and speak. But before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge all of our deacons. If you're a deacon, would you just stand? We've got a great team. Dean, Don, Brian, Steve, David. Thank you, guys. I want to just say something about these men. Each and every one of them are incredible leaders, and I don't say that in a way of flattery. You know them, and you know that each one of them are entrusted with great jobs, that they aren't just full-time deacons at Zion. I don't know if you know that, but they lead their companies. They are involved in business, in coaching and teaching and providing care and comfort for people. I mean, this is a very unique team that God has crafted together, and when we got together as a deacon team, we realized that God was up to something, that he put together this skill and ability, and he wanted to do something. And I got to tell you, as the pastor, and as I watch this team work, I'm just like in awe. You know, I feel like I'm a participant, but I feel like a spectator watching powerful people with this unique ability. Because let me tell you something, people who have power, and what I mean by that is powerful positions in their companies and so forth, usually don't possess this other quality. It's called humility, right? Power people usually aren't humble people. This is very unique because we got a lot of power people with strong leaders who are incredibly humble, who serve this church, who teach Sunday school, who pick weeds, who do stuff that normally power people don't do. God has entrusted them with these types of skills and ability because they're willing to use them for his glory. And so I want to say that over every one of our deacons, but I also wanted to introduce George Pla. George is the head of our deacon board, and he's provided excellent leadership. He's going to come and just share an update on the Sanctuary Project. So give him a big welcome.
Thank you, Pastor. Can you all hear me okay? Great. I want you to know, I want the deacons, I know they've been introduced, but I'd like to ask them to stand. Remain standing. If I have to stand up here, they have to stand up. Part of that is that I want you to, as you hear our report, to know who they are and what's been going on. While I get to report in the next 10 minutes, a lot of work, a lot of meetings, not only with the board, but the staff. I want to tell you that the staff and the board are lockstep. They work as one, and it's been a tremendous effort. Pastor and I met last week and decided that for many of you, especially new members, you would want to know or be reminded about the history of our church. And I'd like you to see up there on the board, Pastor John, Millie, Ruth Ann, and Phyllis. They were the founders. They're the icons. They had a vision for this church more than 30 years ago. Millie, Phyllis, would you stand, please, and represent our founding group? Please stand, Millie. And I also want to ask you to pray for Pastor John. He's not feeling well, and please pray for him. Our basic principles that were established from the beginning is the mission of this church. And that is, it's never changed from day one. Build strong relationships, equip God's people, and advance the gospel. It's never changed. It's never going to change. And that's what this church has been about. I also want to mention to you the next generation of people that lead this church. I was thinking about some individuals that were just little kids running around here 30 years ago, 20 years ago. I want to tell you who they are and what they were doing then, and it'll tell you what's going on today. I remember when Chester was on the basketball court playing, Scotty on the football field, Ben, when he was known as Benny, on the football field leading worship, Linda running around in her cheerleading outfit, and Amy trying to convince Millie that she knew how to sing. And Pastor Danny, who's running around with long hair, looked like some hippie dude. And now these people lead our church. And we have our pastor here. Now, I cite that to you because as you look at our classrooms and all those little kids out there, that's our future. And one of the things that Pastor says is that we must plan on his promise. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is just that, is what is the plan. So let me tell you what's been done up to date, up until this day. The classrooms, have been done, and the kids are running around and checking in, and it's just been a tremendous blessing. The walkway has been tremendous. You remember it was a dark alley, and nobody would walk down the walkway. And that's been tremendous. And I want to thank everyone who handles the breakfasts. They're just amazing. Amen. And Wise Fellowship, we also renovated here. And I want you to know that I gave Pastor a really hard time because I didn't know how this was going to work to have service here, knowing that we're going to be here 6-7 months. And it's just been tremendous. I want to thank the staff because they really worked hard to make Wise what it is today. And I want to please give them a hand as well. And mind you that all that has been done to date and all that you have seen, not one penny did we ask for, and not what one penny was spent out of operating. Lord provided, and here we are. So now we get to the big one, and that's the sanctuary. And I talked about it before. In the last report, I told you, let's just use the M word, $1 million, right? We now have our facts are in, our results are in, and I want to report that to you. The appraisal on the sanctuary came in at $5 million. The sanctuary's paid off. So I thought it was around $3 or $4 million. It's $5 million. We have secured a loan at 1.3. I told you $1 million, but once we checked the retrofit needs up in the ceilings and brought in all the bids from the subcontractors, we are at $1.3 million. We've secured that loan from Citizens Bank. By the way, it's a bank that we have switched to our accounts to. They're in the circle there. If you're there, know that that's our bank. They've been very cooperative. I want to thank David Avina, David, for working really hard in negotiating a loan for us. That is a 30-year loan, fixed. All the other banks offered variable. Rates are going to go up. David said, no, it must be fixed. 30 years, amortized over 5 years, paid off in 5 years. We have a donor that has guaranteed the loan and will pay it off at that amount, and we're just tickled about that. We've secured our permits from the city, no easy task. We have a contractor in place that did the walkway under full disclosure. That contractor is my brother. We believe in family, right, in this church? And I want to tell you, he's my little brother. If he doesn't behave and perform, I go straight to my mother, who's 95. But I want to tell you, we're both scared to death of her. The construction schedule is 7 months. We're looking at March, April. At the latest, this morning, Pastor, I asked him, tell me worst case. He said April. So I think that's a good date. While you can't see what's going on there, Pastor David gave permission that we could go inside and look. We don't need hard hats yet. Demolition has started. The pews on the perimeter are out. They've been donated, as Pastor mentioned, to a church up north. The seismic retrofit work has begun. So a lot has started and more to come. We are going to establish a website where you can see progress on a weekly basis, exactly where we're at, and other ways for you to see where we're at. I want to say to you again that this is not about bricks and mortar or a fundraising campaign. This is to enhance the facilities, to provide more programs for our community. Pastor has said He wants this church to be a lighthouse in our community, and that's exactly where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to be. So the big question is, how do we pay for it? Before that, I want to say again, I've said it before, the culture of this church is not to ask for money. We don't do that. That's not what we do. But we know that this is something that we have to embark on for the future of our church, for our kids. We know we're doing something for the next 100 years. And therefore, it's a reality that we have to figure out how to pay for it. While we have some secured, we still have a lot ways to go. Transparency is important. We want to say again and again, anytime anybody wants to see the books, how much money is raised, how much money is spent, where did it go, come into our office. Lisa Harris is always there, 24/7, I think. And Pastor and all of us, and we will show you what is going on. I want to also tell you again that the pastor, by definition from our founders, does not know who gives and how much they give. And that's by design. And that's a good thing. We want him to concentrate on preaching, right? Not on money. Deacons can deal with that as well. So I can't stress that again enough. We have secured already $200,000 from 3 different donors without asking. We haven't even started. And we have $200,000 secured. We mentioned the loan guarantee of $1.3 million, so we're about halfway. But don't think that we're done. We're going to need your help. The dollars that we are talking about in the work that's being discussed is the interior. We have the exterior to deal with as well. We're not about to stop. And we've made a pledge that we're going to do it right, that it's going to be done right, and we're not going to be chintzy about it. The renderings that you have seen and you will see, please focus on, we're starting the interior, we're planning on the exterior, and that's going to be extra dollars. In reality, by the time we get to the exterior, Don tells me that's probably another $1 million, $1.2 million. So a total of about $2.5 million. Let's just say it, and let's pray about it and figure out how we're going to raise the money for that. So it gets us to fundraising. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, agonized about this. As I mentioned before, we don't ask for money. We're not that kind of a church. But we had to figure out how best we could do this. And so we came up with a relatively simple way to do this. You can participate by signing up for monthly gifts above your tithes. I mentioned before, don't do it instead of your tithes, or the operations are going to be in trouble. It's a monthly gift that is above the tithing that you give. We have one-time gifts. If John King wants to write me a check for $2 million, we're done. So any one of you that want to do that, please come forward. Legacy giving is something that it's a little unique. It's those of you that have wills and trust can designate some of your assets into Zion. That's a common feature, and if you have that in mind and it's in your heart, we certainly would talk with you about that. We also have individual items. That is to say that if you want to designate an offering for a specific thing, the pews, the podium, any particular item, and we'll list for you a menu of items that you want to really give towards that, we also are available to do that. And then, of course, there'll always be offerings. And so we are going to pass out cards to you that provide these items for you. You're welcome to sign up for it as you see fit. We are asking you to pray about this. We are not going to call you. We're not going to badger you. We want you to pray about it, look at the cards, and figure out how you can participate. And then finally, I ask the deacons to stand. If you want to compliment me, come up and see me. If you want to complain, see these deacons that are in this room. So seriously, we have prayed a great deal about it, agonized over it. We think it's a solid plan. The Lord has provided up to now everything that we have planned out, and now we're up to the sanctuary. So please pray, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, George, thank you so much. That was wonderful just to hear an update. This little card that you have here, just hang on to it, but I want you to focus on one thing with it because I want to share with you what God's laid on my heart for today's message. I think we all labored a little bit over how do we, share these important things with each one of you and not take up time from the pulpit and the message and whatever else. And, we labor over, hey, what if you're a guest for the first time? Are you going to come to Zion and get the impression like, oh, no, they're that church? I started coming there and I thought it was awesome, and then they started begging us for money. So we just had to get to the point where we said, you know what, it is what it is. That God is doing something and we're excited about it. And so what we arrived at was that we're not just excited about what God's doing, but we're planning on it. We're planning on it. And so the title of today's message is that we're planning on the promises of God. And I want to take that beyond just what is happening with our sanctuary project. I want to take that into our own lives. And in regard to the sanctuary project, though, I remember sitting in the front pew. Somebody else was speaking on a particular Sunday, and I was just looking around, and as I looked around, there's just this deep sense from the Lord in my heart. How many of you who've walked with Jesus before know when God's kind of talking? Like God's in the room, and thoughts are coming to your mind that aren't your normal thoughts. You guys relate with that? That's what happened. I was just sitting there, and what came to my mind was, it's time to clean this place up. And my limited thinking was, we got to put some carpet and paint in here, And then I brought it to our leaders, and when I brought it to our leaders, they began to pray, and we began to talk and realize that what God was laying on our hearts was something that was not just about beautifying a building, but it was ensuring that a building would be here for 100 years from now. And, we're all for it. How many of you are good if Jesus decides to come back before that? Like, he doesn't have to wait for our building? Okay, good. And when he does return, if we're in the middle of the renovation, it's going to be fine. Like, we're good. But we as believers are intended, whether it's a project like this or promises in your life, we're intended and we're expected, and I believe the Bible calls us to plan on these promises. And I want to speak to that a little bit. I want to speak to the eternal nature of God. How many of you know that if you were to close your eyes for a moment, and please don't, not on a Sunday with dim lights, I'll lose you. But if you were to close your eyes, and if you were to ponder the vastness of God, if you were to really imagine how big God was, you would start to spin out a little bit in your thinking. You would start to picture something so big.